So let's get started. Angular, trying to define Angular. And what is Angular? Angular is a framework helping us to build websites or helping us in web development, helping us with providing features that will not only help us be faster, but also performance wise, it takes care of many things behind the scenes. So what were the technologies preceding Angular? So we have PHP, we have ASP.NET, we have Java technologies that used to help developers in making websites. Okay, I got a message trying to contrast or asking me trying to contrast between Angular versus React versus Vue. We'll get to that in a bit, but let's go to the baseline of what we used to have earlier in developing websites. So I mean the history of websites goes like when the HTML was introduced, it was supposed to be for static web pages, not having any dynamic content, not contacting the server at all, just informational websites. So as HTML evolved, there was a demand for dynamic websites, which basically meant, okay, go to the server, get something from the database or some kind of data store and display it. And also introduce user interaction like forms and user, like for example, registering to some event. So the user enters their details, their information, and then tries to register themselves, and the website responds back with a successful or a failure of their registration, which is basically the definition of a dynamic website. So the server-side technologies, I mean, even just going back to ASP, active server pages, which was way before ASP.NET and PHP. And then those technologies evolved, but all these technologies until frameworks like jQuery. jQuery is not really a framework, but until the technologies of jQuery involved server from the application or the web page lifecycle. Right from the start, the user enters the IP address of a IP address or a domain name of a website, and then tries to navigate to a page. That request would go to the server all the way, gather all the HTML, and try to render it on the browser. And that was good, that worked, but until the server, the client side JavaScript frameworks came along, it was always a concern that everything was going to the web server, even the HTML, and most of the time the same HTML used to come back, resulting in wastage of bandwidth from client to the server. So these modern JavaScript frameworks, what they provide is, instead of going to the server for every request, we could just use get the data, pass on the data, not the HTML itself, and then build the HTML on the client side. So what does the Angular or jQuery or the React or the Vue or the Blazor from Microsoft, what they provide is a way of having the HTML on the client itself, or basically in a higher level overview, give the advantage to the developers of not sending anything else more than required to the server, and get back just what is required rather than the entire HTML or the scripts for that matter. So going back to the definition of Angular, Angular is a framework that provides ease in building and ease in building of websites. So it separates out the concerns of from the designer, who is primarily involved in the design of web pages, uh, from the developers. Developers who write the actual logic of how to display or how to handle the dynamic data. And it's quite popular and probably not as, I mean, I don't know which is more popular, Angular versus React or versus Vue. My feeling is React is most popular and then Angular. Vue is not so much, but I might be wrong. I haven't done any research on that end, but it's just my feeling. Looking at the number of tutorials, number of people who are actually uh, providing their opinions on the social media. Yeah, let's go further and so let me send a message to everyone as to what we need maybe for the next time if somebody doesn't already have them installed. So we need Node.js installed. I mean, I'm just kind of what you say going off track. Just to make sure for the next session we have these on your laptop or your computer so that it will help practicing while we are working while we are trying to code Angular, inshallah. We need Node.js and Angular installed. And Visual Studio Code. Yeah, get the latest version of all of them. Get the yeah, no particular version. Let's get the latest and we'll figure it out along the way, inshallah. So I'm sharing my screen just to see how the Visual Studio Code looks like. And give me 1 second here. I'm trying to bring up the screen. Right now, I mean, it's just empty anyway. Well, this is Visual Studio Code. It's pretty lightweight compared to Visual Studio from Microsoft, and this is open source. This should be free. And also, before I forget, let's create a. If you don't already have a GitHub account, go ahead and create one. We'll navigate how to put our code in the repository and get it back, and also uh, it will help looking at the differences from the previous version as to what we did in the next version as we code along this course, inshallah. So let me refer to my notes as to what to where to go next. Yep. So let's get back to the screen. Okay. And Angular itself had a lot of versions. Right now, they have released just yesterday or day before yesterday, Angular 10. So When they introduced Angular, it was called Angular JS, and it is the very first version, or it's called Angular. Anything before Angular 2 is Angular JS, and after that it's just plain Angular. And the difference, between those two is when they started AngularJS was MVC framework. So basically, MVC framework is something. Let me pull up a notepad so that I can write something along the way. Uh, just open a new file over here. It doesn't have to be any specific. So AngularJS was MVC, was facilitating MVC framework. What is MVC framework? Briefly, it's consists of something called model, view, and a controller. So what happens is with this model, talking about websites specifically, uh, built with this model, when the user enters some URL, it goes to straight to a controller. Controller will have something like so the let's say the URL, it resembles www.some website.com/products -1. So this is the domain, as you probably already know. This is the domain, and this part is called what do you say, a query string or rest of the URL. So when something like this is requested, it goes to a controller name products controller, and from there it tries to invoke an action which accepts. Let me highlight this action. It keeps invoke an action with or that accepts this the product ID, which is one in this case. So what if there was no one? What that means, like, get all the products. So the same product controllers, it invokes the action that gets all the products. And that controller uh, morphs the data into something called model. So if the database has product, I mean, that that will be the most logical explanation of what products is there. So basically, the framework lets the controller build a model from the database into our model, which is this one, or gets the data from the database and transforms it into something called model. So if we have to kind of visualize model, it will probably look like this as product. It will have ID of type number. It will have product name of type string. So something like this. So, but in the database, it might not be, I mean, in a object-oriented way, or in a defined as an object. It will be defined as a relation data with the rows. So that data is fetched and transformed into this kind of model, and a view is served. So view will consist of something, I mean, some HTML. So instead of having, I mean, all the skeleton of HTML, let's go directly to, let's say, a table which will have rows of products basically. And then it will have cells that will display the name or number. So let's say charger. So in a different cell, we don't normally we don't. I mean the websites don't show the ID of the product, but if there are other details that could be shown here. So before even that, I think there will be a heading of so basically that it will have a header as well as the actual name of the product. So this will be a view. So instead of charger, it will be something like product of one. This is like hard coded data, but if it had to be the real data, it will be something like product of zero if we are fetching the array. So first product dot name, or if you are looping through, it will be product of whatever index it is at dot name, or something like that. So basically, controller is in charge in this design pattern of fetching of actually activating the route or figuring out the route depending on what's in the route, and building the model and serving the view to the browser. So that was Angular JS. But what happened with Angular JS was utilizing JavaScript. Probably that is why it's called Angular JS, and because they shifted from using JavaScript to something called TypeScript. They got rid of JS from Angular itself. But so basically, why this history matters is Angular JS is totally different than Angular 2 and henceforth. Angular 2 is different. It might be different in other ways too, but these are the most important. Is facilitating component view framework. So when we go deeper into or when we actually get started, we'll revisit this component view framework as to what it is. And if you have any questions actually on, go back to, if you have any questions on the MVC framework itself, you can ask me now. We can maybe just go a little bit detail on that one. Yeah, I'm trying to get back to the Zoom meeting. Unable to do so. Yes. Oh, share. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting a message that I was in a different window. I didn't see these messages. So MVC, I have a question here asking me if MVC framework can be substituted. It's not clear to me. Can be substituted with okay. I don't know what to do about the screen being blurred. Brother Abdul Rahman, do you have any suggestion how to not make it blur? Yeah, MVC, okay, the question, one of the question is, can MVC be substituted? Okay, I might have internet problem here. I don't know what to do about that. So anybody having, anybody else feel that I have maybe a network issues? Okay, let's. I don't know if network is the real issue, but let's go to a different question because I cannot do anything about it. Uh, so there is a question: if can MVC be substituted? So MVC is a design pattern that is provided by the framework. So if a framework decides, okay, we'll utilize this pattern, then probably we are. If we want to use that framework, we are stuck. We cannot change it. uh, and even if it is possible that we can change it, then that will be a lot of effort. Probably you will write your own framework, and which is good, alhamdulillah. We should be always thinking bold. But if you want to use Angular, then you will have to end up using the design pattern that they have provided. So wherever they give you flexibility of utilizing your own pattern, you can use it. But overall, if you want to use Angular, then Angular 2, then you are stuck with the view component component view pattern, and you cannot just use. Uh, I mean, overall on a higher level, but internally you can use your own design patterns within the scope that you are given, or within the freedom that you are given by the framework. Okay, I'm trying to be loud. Yeah, midway I was my volume was down. Right now I think I'm back up. Yeah. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So there was one more question. What is the difference between React and Angular? And many programmers suggest React. Why? So I think I'll repeat this myself one more time. Uh, the difference between React and Angular is I don't know much about Angular. I took a little bit beginner's tutorial on React, but I don't know much about it. I know Angular because I have done development using Angular. So Angular is popular. React is more popular, like I mentioned earlier. That is my feeling. I haven't done any studies, and Angular comes after that. And I don't have a list, but if I have to make a list, then Angular will be lower than React. And many programmers suggest React because it's more popular. More people probably would have learned that technology, and whatever we are comfortable with, we will suggest others the same. So anyway, I mean, yeah, React would be a good framework to learn to, and inshallah, uh, we'll get there, inshallah. So let's move on. I'll share the screen, but I don't know how to share the screen and simultaneously have a look at the chat. I'll try to figure that out. Or maybe just share the entire screen so that I can switch between those. Okay. So are you able to see my screen now? If anybody isn't able to, just send a message, inshallah. So let me enable the chat. I think yep, I can put it on a side somewhere. So Angular is component view framework. It's not MVC framework anymore, and that means there is no controller. What happens is before even going there, let's tackle the second point. It uses TypeScript. So, like I mentioned earlier, the web development technologies that were provided, like PHP, Java, and .NET or ASP.NET, used or evolved from functional programming languages or scripting languages to object-oriented programming languages. So at some point of time, many developers were not very comfortable with JavaScript. because it was a scripting language, and actually it had a reputation of being not see screen. So I got a message that somebody is not able to see the screen. Uh, Screen sharing is enabled. I don't know what to do over here again. Enable to view screen is not shared. Anybody else has that problem? Screen is black. Let me see if I don't know if brightness anything else. I mean, should affect on my computer. Frozen. Yeah, probably it's Zoom issues, but at least at this point of time, we are not actually coding anything, and whatever I write, I'm just describing in detail. So if you can just make some bullet points, or I can just share this whatever I'm writing in my window, end of the day in the chat itself, inshallah. Okay, yeah. So some are able to see the screen and some aren't. Again, I don't have a solution for that. So let's get back. Inshallah, I'll share whatever I'm talking here. I'm trying making notes with everyone. So TypeScript is a superset. It's called superset of JavaScript, which facilitates object-oriented programming for the developers who are not comfortable at JavaScript. But these days, JavaScript has become, I mean, let me put that become in quotes as one of the first class languages. At some point of time, even the recruiters or even the companies would not fret too much on uh, the candidates being able to being experts in JavaScript. I mean, if some knowledge of JavaScript was good enough, but these days it has become first class programming languages, and many programmers have learned up, and even the programmers from the C Sharp and Java background, even they have learned just like myself. So, but still, TypeScript helps us in writing um, almost JavaScript in an object-oriented way. Yes, brother. Instead of raising hand, just uh, ask the question in the chat. Yes, brother. Who raised the hand? Can you just ask the question in the chat? So the framework Angular JS versus Angular later versions is different in two basic points. There might be more. I don't recall at this point, but if I do, and I think if it is important, then I'll just go ahead and discuss it at later point of time, inshallah. So we'll see what is component view framework, and because this is the first session, I'm not sure if everybody has Visual Studio Code, and I mean the whatever is needed to go further installed on their machine. So we'll go with an alternate way, inshallah. Give me just a couple of minutes over here so that I can refer to my notes as to where to go next. Okay. So let's go ahead and have a first look at how the Angular project looks. So if you can go, if you have access to laptop or a computer, you can go to something called Stackblades. Or I could have just clicked on Angular link directly, but start a new app after going to the website of the Stackblades. Let me just type it over here. For those who are not seeing my screen, they can go to Stackblades and click on new app, and it will give you options. The first one is Angular. Click on Angular. Yeah, for some reason, I don't like dark mode, but many programmers do. So, so this is how an Angular application looks like. Let's have a look at, let's go to Stackbridge again. Let's have a look at a different application too. Let's say a React application, and then try to compare and contrast as to uh, some of the common things between those two, and not only those two, but these days some of the common things between these kind of apps. And for those who can see my screen, there is something called Angular right up top, and then there is something called Angular JS. So that is what, and beneath that you see TypeScript, and for Angular JS you see JavaScript, which is what I was trying to contrast earlier. So Angular JS is written, can be only written in JavaScript, but Angular later versions can be written in TypeScript. TypeScript, which is basically a superset of JavaScript. That means you can just write plain JavaScript in TypeScript files and you should be fine, inshallah. So again, whenever you see a decrease in my volume, just let me know. Uh, I'll increase my volume right away, inshallah. So anyway, let's create a React app over here. So basically, you don't need any software, but having a software is good because these are websites. You can create these applications on this Stackbridge website, but because it's a website, it can not respond uh, quick enough as the softwares do, as the native software that are installed on our machines do. But anyway, so let me try to arrange this screen. Let me unlock this. So we have two windows. One is a React app and one is a. Okay, I'll be little loud. Hopefully that will help in trying to understand what I'm trying to say. So when you say you don't understand, can you let me know if there is specific thing that you don't understand, or you're not understanding what I'm trying to say, or you're not comprehending my language? So just to recap, we are trying to compare and contrast React app versus an Angular app. So these days, the apps they are following a pattern or a design pattern which goes something like this. Uh, so over here, you can see on the left, it's kind of some. It could be called Project Explorer. So these days, the projects, or even any new framework is providing a facility or a common structure to their frameworks, which involves something called package.json. So you see a package.json both over here, which is a file. It's a kind of a configuration file as to what an framework needs for it to process anything. Somehow I'm not able to see the chat anymore. Let me re-enable the chat and put it somewhere. Reduce in size and put it somewhere here so that I can see the messages right away. So anyway, so you see another thing called TS. So at least what is common between these the new modern frameworks is something called package.json. For angular.json, anything related, specifically related to Angular can be stored over here. So this is brief, I mean, very brief overview. I'm trying to contrast between two different apps or two different frameworks. And the package dot, when we say package.json and this .json file, they are basically configuration files as to or telling the framework what to use and how to use it. So, and one more thing that is kind of in Angular, it's kind of hidden under something called a source folder named as src is index.html, and you see the same index.html over here. So little bit structure is a little bit different, but we are just going over some common things with respect to React and Angular app. So we'll go over each of these file, or if not each, but whatever is prominent and important and it makes sense to go over, we'll go over those files inshallah. So, so let's also go over one more. Uh, this was between okay, one second. Just- so let's go over something called single page application, or SPA in short. So single page application, what is a single page application, and what is the difference between multiple page application? That is not actually a term, but how come there was a single, what is single page application? How did it come to be known as single page application? So let's go to some website, yahoo.com. I'm just looking for a very simple website that's not too heavy, but still conveys what I'm trying to convey, inshallah. So, what would be an easier one? Let's go to Yahoo, inshallah, and see if it helps us. So, this is very pretty simple page. Over here, we have something, an input text box that lets us enter our username, email, or mobile. And we have two links over here. There might be buttons. Yeah. So one of them is a link, and one of them looks like it's a checkbox. So I don't know why it is styled as if it is a link, but I was kind of confused. So, and we have which something that looks like a button, but if you hover over it, it displays the URL. Most likely it is a link styled as a button. So basically you have two links over here. And if you look at bottom left corner on my browser, it shows us the link that it will take us to, or the target link. So when I hover over forgot username, it shows us https login.yahoo.com/forgot, and with the query parameter source is no source. So basically what it means is it's trying to take us to this URL, which might be totally a different page, as we can guess from the URL. I mean, it's we cannot guess from the URL, but that's how uh, the things were before single page applications or SPAs. And if you hover over create account, most likely it's a totally different link and totally different page. So login.yahoo.com. When we click on create an account. It will take us to login.yahoo.com/account/create with the rest of it as query string. So, or you might have seen something called on different websites, something called links with for contact us. Most likely that would take you to http some website.com/contact us .html or something like this. So this is totally a different HTML file as compared to, let's say, about us. So again, what does that mean? It has multiple pages serving multiple content. Contact us.html serves contact us and about us, and there might be other links too, but that is multiple link or multiple page application as opposed to single page application. So what is single page application now? So now that we have contrasted it with multiple page application, what is single page? So on over here on StackBlitz, we have seen this index.html. So let's see if there is another HTML over here. No, there is HTML over here, but this .html points to different, totally different thing, which is not same as index.html. This is not a physics. I mean, when Angular runs things, this is not actually a page, and we'll come to that in a bit. But overall, for an Angular app or a React app, there is just one index.html. That is one page. That means single page. So this is a single page application. So single page application again, let's go back to the example of about us and contact us. Right now, I mean, at least until at some point of time, things were like this. There used to be an about us, and there used to be a contact us, and there used to be many different HTML pages serving different content. But with single page application, this could be achieved as well. So even though the links will be contact us again, but we can program or make a website in such a way that there will be just one page, index.html, let's say. Uh, that would say, okay, the user clicked on some link called contact us, so hide everything else except the header, hide other content, or I mean, let's say we just have contact us and about us and not worry about having more than that. So hide about us and unhide or show contact us, and vice versa if it is about us. So this will be still single page index.html. We are just handling the functionality of uh, feature of showing hide us or contact us depending on what the user clicked. If the user hasn't clicked anything and directly typed the page, we can default it to show contact us all the time unless the user clicks about us or toggles between about us and contact us. But then why do we need Angular in the first? Why do we need Angular at all if this could be achieved via JavaScript or maybe jQuery itself? So the biggest advantage of these modern frameworks is they take care of unloading the hiding of contact about us and show loading the contact us part. So why does it make sense? I mean, what is the advantage in loading and unloading? I mean, is hiding, unhiding not enough? It might be not enough because when we unhide, somehow all the logic and all the things related to about us are still on the page. So with these frameworks provide unloading. Unloading means they will be cleared from, let's say, the memory of the executing application itself. So that is the biggest advantage. So these frameworks provide a way of developing single page applications. Basically, I mean, instead of hide, it will be unload. Unload. And instead of show, it will be load. So we don't have to worry as developers about this unloading and showing anymore. I mean, that is another advantage. Earlier, for hiding and showing, the developers would have to take care of these things. So if it is right now, it's the example is pretty simple. It's between contact us and about us. It's easy to show one and hide other. What if there were 10 different things, and then we'll have to somehow make sure that you take care of nine, or hiding nine and showing just one. And because the websites are supposed to be dynamic, and then at 11th 11th action or 11th link is introduced, then you'll have to take care of hiding the 10th one and showing just one. Anyway, the responsibility is not on the developers anymore, it's on the framework, and framework will take care of loading and unloading. Yeah. So how does it achieve the single page application? So uh, let's pause for about like 5 to 10 minutes. If need be 10 minutes, then if anybody has any question, if something is not clear, and even if you want me to repeat something, that's fine too. Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, uh, I believe everybody is seeing my screen and the chat too, but just in case, I'll repeat the question. Uh, any live site example for a single page application? Yeah, somebody is still seeing a black screen. But if you go to the actual Angular website, official website, it's all single page application. Basically, it's developed in Angular itself. So whatever links you see, I mean, it's difficult to actually demonstrate how it is single page, because things happen internally, and there must be a way, but I don't know of any. If you know of, if you come to know of any, let me know. That will increase my knowledge, inshallah. Oops, I sent a message to not everyone, but okay. So this is the Angular official Angular website that is built in Angular framework itself, and because of that fact, it's single page application. And probably that is the reason it's pretty fast. Once you, because unloading and loading happens on the client itself, it doesn't go to the all the way to the server and come back and get served from the server. Any other questions before we move on? So let's walk through the layout of the app. I mean, we actually kind of did, but at a very higher level. So let's go a little bit, maybe one more layer deep. So what happens when a resource, when a page or when a website built using Angular is requested? So if we kind of, what do you say, contrasted it with the MVC framework over here, what happens when a website built using MVC framework is requested? Basically, that means when some user goes to their browser, enter their URL and then hits enter, that is kind of a request to the website. So with the MVC framework, what happens? The controller gets triggered, and controller the controller is in charge of processing that request, and it has actions. It takes depending on type of the URL or the scheme of the URL, it takes action and then serves the view, which is basically an HTML. So basically, you go. I mean, what is website in a very broad sense? All websites are HTML plus CSS plus JavaScript. That's all it is. There is nothing else. Whatever custom you see, they get interpreted or they get translated into either HTML or CSS or JavaScript. So I mean, you must be already aware of this. When you view the page source, that's all you see. All you see is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Any web page. So all these technologies, what they do is eventually serve one of these, I mean, combination of these three. So if you go to the Angular website and then right click and view source, overall that's all it is. All the way to the bottom. Anyway. So that's all. That's what MVC framework do. The controller is in MVC, model view controller. Oops. The controller is in charge or the backbone of the framework. What happens in with Angular website? So there is something called a route. Depending on the route, something gets executed. So before even going to the routes, let's have a look at the index.html, which we just talked about in trying to compare and in contrast with React framework. So there is nothing in here except something called my app, which is not an HTML tag in the first place. So this is the magic of or the work behind the scenes of our Angular app. Okay. Okay. There is a request to stop sharing and reshare again. Probably that will help. I don't know. Sometimes it does, I guess. So stop sharing and okay. I just did stop and restart sharing. Hopefully that helps to whoever was not able to see the screen. So in index.html, all we have is some tag called my app, and which is probably you already know is not a real HTML tag, but somehow it's getting interpreted. And actually, I mean, in StackBlizz, if somebody is not, if anyone is not aware of StackBlizz, it just provides us a ready-to-use tool and start building applications using one of the frameworks that it supports. So on the left side, we have a project explorer, and the actual source files can be could be seen in the middle pane, and the right pane actually renders what these framework or these source files are supposed to render. So for example, But when we see over here, we see a tag, not an HTML tag, and we see the content in between as loading, which is not displayed here at all. So basically, this is the text. It will get displayed while this component is actually loading. But because it's very simple component, and because of that fact, it's pretty fast. And because it is fast, we are not seeing that loading, but instead we are seeing something else. Hello Angular 9, start editing and see some magic happen. Where is that coming from? We'll get to that point in a bit, but what is happening at so the main, I mean, this is kind of a, what do you say, the main files, or not so main, but architecture wise they are the main drivers of Angular. So the main file or the main entry point of an Angular app is something called main.ts. TS in extension, just like JS for JavaScript is for TypeScript is .ts. So because it's written in TypeScript, the extension is .ts. That's all there is to it. So let's go further. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of if there is any detail that I could add to this main.ts, but I will get there. I mean, if need be, instead of me pausing and trying to think about, let's go further. And if there is anything else, we'll come back and then go over it. So main.ts tells the Angular what to do on initialization. That means, let's say this application is requested by the user for the first time. The main.ts file gets executed. And the main, I mean, it has not a lot of code, but the main thing that it has is something called platform browser dynamic. And that bootstraps a module, which is an app module in this case, and asks the framework to do something. What it is, we'll come back to that. But this is main file. The main trigger, it bootstraps. What is the meaning of bootstrap? Is it tells the framework to get started with this module. And what is a module in broader sense? Module is something that holds related files together. I mean, in software engineering terms, in computer science terms, module is an area that holds related files together. So with Angular, module is something that holds a term called components and their services together. So let's look at how that module looks. So basically, in other terms, I mean, it's common sense that when we create files and folders, we create folder to hold related files together, right? So let's say I'm having, what do you say, all my documents together scanned and storing on my computer, right? So what will I do? I'll just create, let's say, a folder called docs. Docs, and probably name member one, another folder within the docs, and then have all the files related to member one in that folder. It's as simple as that. So if you look at this, so anyway, app module, right now we don't have a folder structure, but we can easily create a new folder. Let's say some module. Let's not go too deep into the naming conventions and all the stuff at this point of time. So I created a folder, and then within that folder I can just say Angular generate me a component. So it's asking me to enter a name of the component. So I'll just say some component again. Okay, some component. I don't know, for some reason it's not working. Okay, looks like it's want to give me some hard time. Anyway, you get the idea. So module is something, and it doesn't have to be a folder. I mean, I created a folder just for organization. And just like over here, I mean, it doesn't have to be a folder. I could have easily done docs, created a folder and not even a folder there over there. Member one, passport. One more, member one, I don't know, driver license. So something like that. I mean, just name the files, put them all together, mix them all together. It will not be so organized, but just to organize it, I have created a folder. It could have been, I mean, the module itself, one more module, app module, one more, and then related components. Then how do we relate that component? So folder is just a structure so that we could visualize how does module relate to a component is where something called imports, declaration, and bootstrap. We'll get there slowly one by one. I'm just giving you an idea right now. So this is a module app called app module. It is a module. I mean, right now, if you just look at this, just this line 13, it just says something called export and then class app module. It just says this is a class. What makes it a module? I mean, it could be some other name, any name. But the convention is to have a module at the end just for readability. So what makes it a module is not the module append or suffixed at the end of it, but what makes it a module is this part, @ng module. We'll come back to this in a little bit more detail later on, but right now what glues module and components together is this decorator. It's called decorator. We'll get into that later. And this is the declaration section. So basically we have app component. App module is glued to app component via these declarations. And bootstrap is a special construct that is applicable to the default module. So in main.ts we have seen default or bootstrap module. Main.ts we are telling the framework to bootstrap to get this module ready. And within the module we are saying, we are indicating to the framework within this module get this component ready for further processing. So this is how Angular is laid out. So it's pretty simple. So the structure is everything goes under source except these three. We can have something extra over here too, but everything, whatever we are sourcing, we are trying to code will go under source. So these things are generated for us on StackBliz, but we could easily create a folder and add these. I mean, it's not so easy, but it's possible. We could create these files and generate our own structure. So Angular cares about some base files and everything else is up to us. But this is a common structure. If I mean, let's say you develop a website using Angular, and if you want to have your own structure, and you leave the company, and then somebody else joining the company will have a hard time trying to figure out what exactly you did, because this is that would be different from the convention. or Angular proposed convention. So it's better to stick to this structure. Again, coming back, it's everything goes under source, and under it there will be something called app, and there you can have everything however you want to organize. But the best practice is to create folders for each module and have module related stuff over there. So that is basically an Angular architecture in words. Let's have a look at how Angular architecture is pictorially depicted on the website itself. Actually, I mean, let's stop there because it's time up, and also I need to be someplace else. We'll stop here and catch up from here in our next session tomorrow, inshallah. And today it was like we had to start at 8:15. Tomorrow we'll start at sharp 8, inshallah. And yeah, I wish I would take some questions now, but 5 minutes. I don't know if it is enough for me to take questions and respond. Inshallah, tomorrow hopefully things will be better with respect to screen sharing and as well as my voice. So somehow the chat window got minimized and I got a message that he can't see and read properly. Yep, inshallah, we are recording the session, and we'll see if it is good quality, and we'll upload and let you all know, inshallah. All right, inshallah, we'll regroup tomorrow. And today it was mostly terminology and definitions and all the stuff, all the kind of boring stuff. Inshallah, hopefully, as we take care of these and we actually start coding and actually start developing, inshallah, things will be more interesting. All right, inshallah, we'll regroup tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
What are you learning about?
So, yeah, a good suggestion from Ahmad Sheikh that if you are using the browser, better to download the Zoom app itself rather than use the browser. Browser might be slow because it's not native to your operating system. So maybe it will help, yeah, and inshallah we hope it will help. So I request everyone to download the Zoom app and access the meeting via the Zoom app. All right, inshallah. I have to leave. We'll regroup tomorrow, inshallah, sharp 8 o'clock. Inshallah, things will be interesting from tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You're recording on your phone.